Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes running fast if you're the Car Chick. Now, here she is.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Straight Shift. Sorry it's been a little while since my last episode. My lungs are still recovering from COVID, and talking for long periods of time uninterrupted is still a bit of a challenge. But I've also had the pleasure and honor of being a guest on a couple of other podcasts. One of them is called All the Hacks with Chris Hutchins. It's a great podcast where he gives you all these neat little tips and secrets for getting just life adulting things done more efficiently and for less money. It's a really great podcast, so check that out. He covers tons of different topics. The other one was How to Money with Joel and Matt. These guys are hilarious. They are two best friends who just love to sit around talking about money-related things while drinking really good craft beer. So they talk about money and beer. So teaching you how to save money so you can spend more of it on beer, I guess. They're hilarious, and they were a lot of fun to do a podcast with. So check out All the Hacks with Chris and How to Money with Joel and Matt. If you just Google those podcasts will come up, and they are really, really great podcasts. They have also been really good for me in generating a lot of calls from people who are trying to buy cars, in many cases struggling to buy cars in this completely crazy market we find ourselves in. But what has struck me is that several of them have been first-time car buyers. Gosh, I would really hate to be a first-time car buyer trying to navigate that whole process for the first time in this insane market where there's no inventory. But I have also worked with several first-time car buyers over the past several months, and I realized that while I have a lot of great information for first-time car buyers on all my podcasts, it's spread across all of my, what are we on, episode 78 podcasts now. So it's not as easy for them to just glean the information that they need to know going through this process for the very first time. So today's episode is going to be what to do when you're a first-time car buyer, what you need to know, what you need to avoid, and just how to even get started in the first place. So whether you're a teenager buying your first car, which is super exciting, or you're a new college graduate buying your first real car, or even if you're just a fully fledged adult who is buying a car for the first time. A couple of the clients that I've had recently have been adults, in their 30s and even early 40s who have just lived in a major city like Manhattan their whole lives and then moved to another area of the country where you actually need a car, and they've just never had to buy a car. Growing up in a city like New York, one, it's too expensive to own a car for most people, but you just don't need one because of the extensive public transportation in most cases. So, this, even though they were perfectly intelligent and experienced adults and knew how to do all the other adulting things in life, they just never had the occasion to buy a car before. So some of those folks were just so much fun to work with because having the maturity, they knew what they didn't know and asked all these great questions, and we had a lot of fun going through the process together and learning. So any type of new car buyer, here's the information that you need. So let's get started. And we're going to start with one of my absolute commandments when it comes to car buying. Whether you are a first-time car buyer or you have bought 15 cars across your life, buying a car is a process, not an event. Let's say it with me, folks. Buying a car is a process, not an event. Well, what does that mean? That means that you don't just say, I think I'll go buy a car today, and walk onto a dealership lot and, ooh, this one's pretty, and just buy it. You need to take your time and go through a step-by-step process if you want to make sure you, number one, buy the right car for you, and number two, you get the best deal on it and you make a smart financial decision, both to meet your needs right now and also looking several years down the line at what you think your horizons look like, so that it's also a strategic purchase, not just a tactical one. So where do you start in this process? Step one, budget. It always starts with the money and figuring out how much car can you really afford. So are you going to pay cash for a car? Maybe you need just something inexpensive. You're going to start small. A lot of teenagers buying their first cars or parents helping them buy their first cars are just looking for something a little more on the inexpensive side and they're going to pay cash. Or are you planning to finance this purchase with getting a car loan? Are you thinking about leasing a car? If you are, stop right here. Don't do it. First time car buyers are rarely good lease candidates because you probably don't really know how much driving you're really going to be doing. And leasing a car is just way too risky. Plus, you have to have really good credit to lease. And a lot of first time car buyers haven't had the opportunity to build that credit yet. So, getting a car for the first time, really don't recommend leasing. Let's go ahead and buy the car. But if you are looking to get a car loan for the vehicle, do you have good credit? Do you have any credit yet? A lot of younger car buyers may not have built up a credit history yet. And you may need a cosigner. You might need a parent or a family member to cosign that first loan with you. Or you may have to pay a slightly higher interest rate and just suck it up and use that loan to help build good credit, especially if you've got a decent down payment. Now, some manufacturers and their captive finance companies have really good first time car buyer programs. They typically are for recent college graduates because they want to make sure that you've got a good job, preferably something that pays a salary, has a regular, steady good income. And you'll probably have to prove that not only have you just graduated or you're in the process of graduating, within the next few months, but that you also have a job or have a job lined up that can be proven with documentation like a verification of employment from that employer. So they'll tell you what kind of proof and documentation that you'll need to back that up. But just be aware that, especially if you're looking to buy a brand new car, you just graduated, you got a good job, you want to get a brand new car. Some of the manufacturers have really good programs for that. So be sure to ask if they have a first time car buyer program with interest rates that are not as awful as you might face just going to your bank. Also, if you're buying a new car, there may be rebates for new college graduates. So be sure to check that out. A lot of the manufacturers will consistently offer like a $500 rebate for recent college graduates within a certain time window. So save as much money as you possibly can. I remember buying my first new car after I graduated from college. That summer, I came home after graduating and I had a job lined up that was going to start in August. And we got home from college at the end of June. And so, like, one of the first things we did when we got home was I wanted to buy a brand new car. And so I went out with my dad and I had wanted to buy a small SUV, which back then was more like a small enclosed truck. It's not like the SUVs that dominate our market today. So I got an Ford Explorer Sport, the two-door version, and this one happened to have been a dealer demo model. So it had some really cool things. It had much nicer wheels on it. It had this cool lighted visor that made it look like kind of like Darth Vader. And it was a cool truck. And I wanted to have the four-wheel drive because I was in Ohio and knew I'd probably be driving through a lot of snow. And my dad was a master negotiator and beat up the poor dealer. And then at the end, after he whittled him down to just the bottom line price, he's like, "Oh yeah, and she just graduated from Stanford, so we get that $500 rebate, right?" And just like, you just saw the color drain out of the poor dealer's face. It was hilarious. But I had built a little bit of credit for myself because my parents had me get a credit card when I opened my bank account when I started college and said, mostly for emergencies, but, put your gas on that, gas and what, little groceries you're buying. Use the credit card for that, pay it off every single month, and that will help build some credit. So I had a little bit, I had about 4 years of credit history, and I still paid a high interest rate, but interest rates back then were ridiculously high anyway. So I was probably only about 2 points higher than the norm at the time. But, it was a first car loan. So it was one of the great ways to start building my credit history. And it was really exciting being able to buy a brand new car. Well, almost new. It was a demo model. I think it had like 3,000 miles on it, but it was essentially new. and be able to do that completely on my own. I didn't need a co-signer. Granted, Dad did all the negotiating at the time, but it was very empowering. So we'd done a lot of homework, and it was a great car. It worked out really well for me. So that was my first real car that I bought for myself. But go ahead and get pre-approved for a loan if you can from your own bank before you go to a dealership, especially if you're a member of a credit union or you have the ability to join one, because credit unions usually have better rates and often they can be more flexible with approving loans for people with no credit, not so great credit, and even first time car buyers, especially if you have at least a little bit of credit history, if you've had a little credit card for a while. That way, it'll also help you know how much car you can afford based on what the bank is going to approve you for. However, just because the bank approves you for a certain amount doesn't mean you should actually spend all of that amount on a car. You've got to look at your whole budget. Don't forget to factor in insurance because that may be higher if you don't have a lot of driving history. You also have to factor in gas, maintenance costs, etc. Decide how much you feel comfortable paying per month on the car payment itself, factoring in also what you're going to pay per month on insurance and keeping the car going. And then you need to do the math yourself to convert that monthly payment into the total amount that you can spend on a car. Never ever let the car dealers do the math for you. Always do that math on your own because you don't want to walk into a dealership and say, oh, I can afford $300 a month. I mean, they love it when people say that. There's the dollar signs start going off in their brains because there's a lot of things that they can do to get to that $300 a month, and you don't realize that you have bought way too much car and financed it for way too long, or you've leased and you didn't realize it was a lease. So do the math yourself. Google auto loan calculator, and this really simple, easy one pops up, and you can play around with different loan amounts and interest rates and then what that translates to on a monthly payment. But don't finance a car for more than 60 months, especially as a first-time car buyer. It's just too risky that you're going to be super upside down on that car for a really long time. If you've got to go all the way out to 72 months, then you're probably trying to buy too much car and you may want to scale back a little bit, get fewer options, maybe look at something that's gently used, certified pre-owned instead of brand new. You really need to make a conservative decision as a first-time car buyer because you probably have some other things going on in your life that are also new, and you just kind of need, I'm just really financially conservative, so just, be conservative. But now that you know how much you can spend on a car, it's time to start doing your homework. I know you just graduated from college, like, homework. I thought I was done with homework. Nope, sorry, you're not done with homework. You've got to research the car. And also, looking at that full budget that you calculated for how much you can spend on the car, here's another thing you got to factor in: taxes, tag and title, and all of your other government fees, the dealer's dock fee. It's all what we call in the car business plus tax, tag, and dock. So it's not just going to be the price of the car. Say the car you're looking at, the price tag's $20,000. Your budget is not just $20,000. Now it's probably going to need to be like $22,000 or $22,500, depending on what state you live, because you have to factor in the tax, tag, and dock. So I say take that full budget that you've calculated that you're comfortable with, and assuming whatever money you're going to put down, add that to your budget. But then you need to subtract from that a couple $1,000s, depending on what state you live in, to factor in those taxes and fees. And it really can vary dramatically by state. So if you don't know what the taxes are on vehicles in your state, and it's not the same as sales tax. So if you go to the computer store and buy a laptop, you have to pay sales tax on that laptop. That sales tax rate, that's not the same as the tax that you pay on cars. It's a totally different calculation. So, for example, in North Carolina, vehicle tax is 3% statewide, and that's one of the lowest in the country. If you live in California, so sorry, but it's more around 10%, and it can vary by what county you live in. So that website is really great. You can actually go onto the California's DMV website and put in all the information, and it will show you a breakdown of the estimated all the taxes and fees. And there's a bazillion in California, so you can count on at least 10%, 10 to 12% of the purchase price of your car. Add on top of that what you're going to have to pay to the government. On the flip side, Oregon, if you live in Oregon, you're lucky enough to live there. Guess what? Zero tax on cars. They get you in other places, but there's no vehicle taxes in Oregon. It's pretty awesome. So, but it doesn't matter where you buy the car, it's where you live where you have to register the car. So it's not like you're going to save on taxes by crossing state lines and buying a car from a dealership somewhere else. Now, as for the dealer doc fee, we call the doc fee or admin fee. Almost every dealer charges one. There's some mom and pop shops that don't, but that's just a fee that the dealers charge that just literally, it just adds to their profit, but it helps them cover things like paying for the title clerks and their back office people who file all of the DMV paperwork for you. And that fee can vary. Some states cap that fee by law. So in California, you pay through the nose on the taxes, but they cap that doc fee. It's like less than $100. States like North Carolina, Virginia, a lot of other states, they don't control that by law, and the dealers can charge whatever the heck they want. And depending on the dealership, it can be anywhere from $299 at a really small mom and pop store up to nearly $1,000 at like Kia dealerships and some of your Highline dealerships. It's ridiculous. So be sure that you know what the doc fee is that the dealer charges where you're looking at buying the car from. So those are just all the things that you have to factor in to that budget and really knowing, okay, what is my target price for the car that I want to buy, knowing what my overall budget is and all these extra things I'm going to have to pay for. So this is where you start researching the cars because now you have that number. I'm looking for a $10,000 car. I'm looking for a $20,000 car. I'm looking for a $30,000 car if you're really lucky. And cars may be super fun and exciting to you like they are to me, or it just may be a necessary evil for getting from point A to point B where you live. Whatever your attitude is towards cars, you still need to research all the different vehicles to figure out which one best fits, number one, your budget, number two, your lifestyle. The vehicle needs to do what you need it to do. Are you just commuting to work in a lot of traffic and you want to get really good gas mileage, or do you also like to go backpacking on the weekends? And so it needs to, be able to go off road a little bit and carry all your camping gear. You need to look at all of these things to figure out what's the right vehicle for you, depending on your personality and most importantly, your priorities. And this is a big part of what I do for my clients as a part of the perfect car process. And so I did one of my earliest podcast episodes. Episode 5 was called How to Pick the Perfect Car. So you might want to go back and re-listen to that one if you haven't already to get more detailed information on kind of how all the different things that I consider and look at to help you figure out what's the best car for you. You also have to decide, are you buying brand new? Are you going to buy used? How used? There's a lot of great research tools on the internet. Edmunds.com is one of my favorites for just learning what the cars have. They really do a good job of breaking down each of the different trim levels, which is like LX, EX, just the different levels of swankiness that the manufacturer breaks down that particular model into. Edmunds really makes it very clear which bells and whistles you get in which trim levels and which optional packages. It just really breaks it down so much better than even the manufacturer's website. So it's one of my favorite for that. And they also make it really clear, okay, well, what's new this year? What changed from this year from last year's model? So it's just a lot of information in a very concise and clear format. And that's what I love about them. I also use Consumer Reports a lot. It's well worth, I don't know what, it's like 30, 40 bucks a year, totally worth it. But it gives a lot of good information on recalls and predicted reliability on new cars based on the history of that manufacturer or that particular model and what changes were made. If you're researching used cars, it's an essential tool for looking at the reliability and what issues might have come up in that year and what recalls it had. So it's well worth paying for a subscription for a year to get that information. And if you just want to learn a little bit more about what the car looks like and the bells and whistles and, kind of how a lot of the technology works, that's where your YouTube videos come in. There's so many great YouTubers out there that do really good reviews. Just Remember to take them with a grain of salt because it's that person's opinion, and you should probably look up what the qualifications of that reviewer are. There's a lot of really good industry experts that are out there and doing great reviews. And then there's just a lot of, just people who like cars that are just YouTubers who are doing it for fun and to hopefully make some money. But it's just always good to kind of know, okay, if this person's giving you information, is it information that you can trust because they are an expert, or is it more of their opinion because they're just an enthusiast? One of the sources that I really like, and granted, I'm a little bit biased because I do a column for them, but A Girl's Guide to Cars. If you go to agirlsguidetocars.com, it's a fantastic website. Yes, it is for women by women, but guess what, guys? There's a lot of good information there because they're very editorial in all of their reviews and the information that they give. So you're just going to get a lot of good facts broken down very efficiently, not so much opinions. So I just think it's a very objective source, and the editor, Scotty, is just really good about maintaining a very editorial and objective view of the information that they present, as opposed to a lot of not so humble opinions, which is more what I tend to do. If you've been listening to my podcast at all, I have to tone it down when I write articles for her. But this is where you can do a lot of that research. Again, if you're looking for used cars, one of the sources that I have found that's really helpful, because sometimes it's hard to find really specific what problems were certain cars known for in certain years. So I found that if you Google problems with the year, make, and model car you're looking at, a lot of good data comes up, and much of it comes from sites like carcomplaints.com. That's a really good site for breaking down information, both from complaints that people have actually submitted who own those cars, but also they collect data from the industry. And so what complaints were made to the government and what went into recalls. So they pull data from a lot of good sources and put into these nice graphs so you can see all the different years for that make and model car, and then a nice chart, a graph that shows you how many complaints there were. And then you can drill down into a lot of the details. And sometimes that's the only way to find that level of information on problems with the cars in a concise location. So carcomplaints.com is really, really good for that. And then you need to research the pricing. You're going to hear several different terms. MSRP, or sticker price. That's the manufacturer's suggested retail price. That's the price you really don't ever want to pay, the current market notwithstanding. And then you'll hear the term invoice price. That's literally the invoice that the manufacturer sends to the dealer, and that's what the dealer pays for the car. It's their cost. And there may be some things in there that are not published, like their advertising fees, etc. So take that invoice price with a grain of salt. Edmunds list said there's a lot of websites that list it, and be sure you put in your zip code because it will factor in some of the costs that go into that invoice price for your geography. Is not exactly the same everywhere in the country. So it depends on the manufacturer's relationship with the dealers in that area. But it will at least give you a ballpark idea of what the dealer cost is, plus any incentives, rebates that may apply to you, low APRs that you may or may not qualify for depending on your credit. Edmunds has good information on that. You can get a lot of it through the manufacturer's website. And these things are for new cars. You don't get the rebates on the used cars, but it's a lot of good information if you're looking for a new car. You can also check out episode 45 of The Straight Shift, where I talk about exactly how new car incentives actually work in nitty-gritty detail. So you might want to check that out if you're looking for a new car. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about test driving the car, how you shop and negotiate for it, and things you need to watch out for at delivery if you're a first-time car buyer. I'll be right back after this. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of, or about finding the right car at a great price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 704 248 8706. That's 704 248 8706. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Nice to meet you. Love your asphalt.
Hey, nice treads.
It's Straight Shift with the Car Chick.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Straight Shift. Today we are talking about what first-time car buyers need to know. We've talked about figuring out your budget and then where to go to research cars. So now you have done that research and hopefully you've narrowed it down to 2 or 3 makes and models that you want to check out. If it's more than that, then it kind of gets a little overwhelming and they start to run together. So I tell people really don't test drive more than, say, 3 vehicles if you can avoid it. Because, again, it just gets too complicated and they all start to run together and look alike after a while. And you can get into analysis paralysis and it makes it more difficult to make a decision. Too many choices can actually be a bad thing. But it's time to put your butt in the seat. A car may look really great on paper and even in the YouTube videos, but when you actually sit in it yourself and play with controls and look at the technology and drive the car and see how it drives, see how it feels, you may find it's not right for you. It may not appeal to you. The interior is not quite as nice as you thought it was going to be. It's just not comfortable for your body. I have a saying, comfort is in the butt of the beholder. So you've got to see if that car is comfortable for you. Some people like a really snug cockpit that hugs the driver and the car drives a little more sporty and the steering wheel has a little bit of a heavier feel. Whereas other people want to have a little more space to kind of stretch out. They don't want to feel so claustrophobic. They want the vehicle to drive a little more floaty, a little more relaxed. So everybody is different. That's why you got to get your butt in the seat. But before we get to the dealership, we are going to say one of my other mantras. Do not buy the car the same day you test drive it. Say it with me, folks. I will not buy the car the same day I test drive it. Why? Because test driving is fun and it's exciting. And if you really love the car, then your emotions are heightened and you want it, you want it, you want it, you want it. You're not as likely to negotiate a good deal for yourself because you're making a more emotional buying decision. You've got to separate your emotions from your money if you expect to negotiate. Some people are super cool cucumbers and can do that, but most people can't. But especially if you're a first-time car buyer, don't even think about it. And don't fall for a lot of the BS that the dealers are going to try to say because they want you to buy that day, because they want to take advantage of your heightened emotional state. It's the same reason they put the candy bars right there at the checkout line at the grocery store. It's an impulse emotional purchase. And okay, that's fine if it's a $2 candy bar. Although it's still probably a bad idea. But when it's a $20,000 or $30,000 car, you do not want to be making an impulse decision. So don't fall for any of their BS. Tell them up front. And what I recommend is that you schedule your test drives. You don't just show up at the dealership and get assigned whichever car salesperson is just next in line to grab the people that walk onto their lot. Go onto the dealer's website. You should be looking at their website anyway to just see if they have the inventory that you're looking for, especially right now when nobody has inventory. Even test driving is challenging right now. But a lot of the dealers also have a staff page on their website under the About Us tab, and you can look through all the different salespeople. If you're a woman, look to see if they have other female salespeople. If you want to specifically work with a person who speaks your language, maybe English isn't your first language. You need someone who speaks Spanish, speaks Korean, speaks Chinese, whichever language you're most comfortable in. In a lot of geographies where there are a lot of different cultures living in that area, they will very often have multilingual salespeople at the dealerships. It's really great. Helps you get the information in the language you're most comfortable with and, allows you to work with someone from your own culture, which might make you more comfortable. So pick a salesperson, or talk to the internet manager and schedule your test drive so that you have an appointment at a specific day and time, preferably not on the weekends when it's crazy. take the time during the week if you can. And that way you'll have a specific person to start building a relationship with. If you can talk to them on the phone to see if you kind of mesh with them on the phone, you can get a lot about a person when you talk to them on the phone. You see if you vibe with them. How friendly are they? How enthusiastic are they about working with you? How chill do they seem? Do they seem a little more laid back? So you want to research the dealership and the salesperson as well, and schedule your test drive somewhere that you feel like you're going to be comfortable. Even if that dealership is not the one that's down the street from your house, if you've got to go across town to find someone that you feel like you'll be more comfortable with or to find the right car to drive, do that. It's well worth it for your experience. But don't let them push you into anything. Let them know right up front, I am not buying a car today, period. Nothing you say will get me to buy a car today. I am going through the process and I am simply deciding which car is right for me, and I'm test driving several different vehicles. If I end up deciding on this car, I will call you and we can see if we can work out some numbers. So this is what you tell the salesperson right up front to set their expectations. That's not to say that they're going to behave themselves and not try to, make that sale when you're done with the test drive, but you have to be very strong about that and push back on them. And don't fall for things like, well, if I can get you this price, will you buy today? That's called iffing you. It's always BS. This car won't last. I've got 5 other people looking at it. Okay, in this market, that's probably true, but it's still not a reason for you to necessarily make a buying decision before you are ready. So check out episode 47, the lies car dealers will tell you in order to close the sale. And it's not always a lie, but it's always a sales technique. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. But you have to control the buying process. You cannot let them control the sales process. It's your money, your decision. So stay in control. So take their business card, thank them, and then leave. Don't talk to the manager. There's nothing the manager has to say to you that's important at this point. Don't sit down at the desk. Don't even go back into the dealership if you don't have to. Don't just get sucked into their process. Just thank them, take their business card, shake their hand, then get back in whatever car you drove there in and leave. All right, step 4. Now that you've decided which car is perfect for you, you need to shop around. And this is where we get the benefit of everything that's available on the internet. Every car dealership, I think, in the world now, at least in the US, is online. They have a website. And you can shop from the comfort of your own home, preferably in your pajamas. That's just kind of my thing. But there's no need to negotiate in person and spend 6 hours in the dealership. A lot of really savvy car buyers will know how to do that in-person negotiation and use it to their advantage. My dad was that way. He loved doing it. So I think he just liked to see them cry. He was that obnoxious about it. But, that was also a long time ago, and it was before the day and age of the internet. So I recommend shopping around. That's what I do. I usually have 2 phones sticking out of both ears when I'm shopping for clients. It allows you to shop multiple dealers more efficiently. You can look at their websites for inventory, but just because the car's on their website doesn't mean it's actually available, especially right now. But you can really even look at dealers that are not even in your town. Look outside your geography. A lot of times that's what it takes to find the inventory these days, but also dealers outside your area, they may have incentives to sell outside of their area. And so they may give you a better price and still, deliver the car to you so you don't have to drive 2 or 3 hours. They'll bring the car to you. So there's an advantage to shopping around, not just in your immediate area, but outside of your area within maybe a 2-hour driving radius. If you're looking at used cars, I prefer sites like AutoTrader and Cars.com. They're some of the best aggregate sites. They're not 100% accurate because it's when dealers sell cars, the way the feeds work, depending on if it's an automatic feed from the dealer's computer system or if the dealer has an intern that they pay to update the website manually, it's never in real time. So again, if you see a car on one of those aggregate websites, then go to that dealer's individual website and look it up and see if it's actually there, and then call and make sure it's actually there because the online inventory is just never accurate. But also one thing that I say, always call them. Don't bother using that stupid chat window on their website. That person usually doesn't work for the dealership and they're completely and utterly useless. All they're going to do is take your information and put it into their lead generation system, and you're going to get 1,000 emails generated by a computer, not an actual person, and you'll never get off of there. Same thing with using the contact form on their website. Again, that feeds you into their marketing system, and you'll never get off of it, and it's just a royal pain in the butt. You're going to get 1,000 emails, none of which are helpful. So I always pick up the phone and call the manager, and I always speak to a sales manager. I don't want to talk to a salesperson unless it's the person that you worked with on your test drive, but still, I work with the managers. Granted, in my position, I have a little more pull to do that, but it's because the managers have the pricing decisions. Your salesperson, number one, they want to sell you the car for the most money possible because that's how they get paid. Their commission's based on that. The manager has more authority to reduce the price, and he or she is looking at the bigger picture of their overall dealership sales for the month. They're looking at the overall numbers, and they may decide, hey, I can take a loss or a zero profit on this deal because I need to make these numbers. I'm trying to meet a certain quota. It's a completely different motivation and a different pay grade for being able to make those decisions. So if you have the opportunity to speak on the phone to a sales manager, do that. That is going to be the best way for you to get the best price. You need to ask for a full numbers breakdown. It's not just about the price of the car that you're buying, because there's a lot of ways that the dealers can bait and switch you. It's called a bait and switch. They'll throw out a really low number on the car and then want you to come in to take delivery. And then all of a sudden you see the whole paperwork and they've added on $5,000 worth of crap to the car that you didn't agree to and didn't realize was kind of part of their pricing strategy. So always ask for a full numbers breakdown showing the out the door price with all taxes and fees numbered out line by line. And sometimes they will lump a bunch of them together with government fees. They'll say taxable fees and non-taxable fees. Well, what are those? Go back and ask. What are the non-taxable fees? What are the taxable fees? Why are they taxable? Why are they not taxable? Some states, the dealer's dock fee is taxable. You have to add that to the price of the car, and then the sales tax is calculated on that. Sometimes they're not. The non-taxable fees are usually the DMV fees, but have them break those down. Make sure you understand every single number that goes into each line item. And that way you can compare apples to apples across dealerships. One of the big things that dealers do is they will put things like a protection package or just some such extra stuff on the car that adds to their profit margin. And they can show the car at a really low price, but now they've really added all that profit back in by charging you $2,000 or $3,000, for window tint and rubber floor mats, which is like $500 maybe. So there's a huge markup on those things. A lot of the items they add may be things you don't want. Like, I don't want VIN etching in my windows. I don't care. I don't live in an area where car theft is a big deal, and I drive a manual transmission, so nobody can steal my car anyway because they don't know how to drive stick anymore. But you just need to look at what are they including in that. Sometimes you can get them to take that off. Sometimes they've already added it to all their cars, but if that's a sticking point for you, say, okay, well, if you're going to charge me for those things, I'm not buying from you. That's a deal breaker for me, and walk away. Which walking away when you're doing it through the phone is really easy. Thank you. Click. Close your internet browser. You're good to go. So that will allow you to compare. Some dealers add on those things, some don't. You've got to be able to compare every single line item, apples for apples. And that's where it gets challenging, but that's really the trick to shopping for cars, especially these days. It also gives you the opportunity to think ahead of time about things like extended warranties or maybe a prepaid maintenance program. Those are things that dealers offer, and they usually wait until you're in the finance office to ambush you with all those things. If you want to think of those ahead of time and pre-negotiate any of those things that you might want. And honestly, extended warranties and prepaid maintenance are the only two things that they typically offer you in the finance office that are even worth considering. Everything else is just junk you don't need. But this is an opportunity to say, hey, I might be interested in this. And some of them will say, oh, well, the finance manager will talk to you about that when you get here. You say, no, we're going to talk about it now, and I expect to get a discounted price, or my answer is just going to be no. If you want an opportunity to sell me this product, you will, give me the information now at a discounted price. You just really got to be very firm, bordering on what I call kind of a diplomatic jerk about it. Because again, you're staying in control and you are controlling this process. You're not letting them lead you through their process. And I'm saying a lot of this, and don't get me wrong, I am not against the dealers in any way, shape, or form. Not the honest ones anyway. There's some dealers that I would not buy a lawnmower from, and we won't even talk about them. But dealers are a business, and they're just trying to make a profit. That's what a business does. They're not a charity. They are not obligated to give you a zero profit deal on a silver platter. If they did, they wouldn't keep their doors open. So this is just how the game is played because of the negotiating that is a normal part of buying a car. This doesn't happen when you go to the grocery store to buy bananas and hamburgers. So it's different. And if you want to get a good deal for yourself, and, the dealer can still make a little bit of money. There's a way to create a win-win situation here. But sometimes you got to be really, really firm about it because the markup on, especially those extras in the finance office, is usually really, really high. With the exception of prepaid maintenance, that is normally based on what their prices are in the service shop, and prepaid maintenance packages can usually save you around 10 to 20% if you do your maintenance at the dealership. So that might be worth it to you, but it's not something that usually can discount, or not a lot, because there's not as much of a markup on it. It's a different type of product. But again, look at those things ahead of time. Switching gears, pun, yeah, intended, sorry. But if you're buying a used car, you have to go through a lot of additional steps because you got to make sure it's a good quality used car. So number one, Carfax report. Never buy a used car without a Carfax report. You can see episode 9, I believe, which talks about how not to buy a used car. And you can also check out an article on my blog at thecarchick.com. Just click on the blog link that's called Don't Judge a Car by Its Carfax Alone. Gives you a ton of information of how to read a Carfax report and, what information to look at, what to take with a grain of salt. So it's a good article. The biggest thing is you always want to get a pre-purchase inspection by a qualified mechanic. I'm going to say it again, a pre, meaning before you buy it, inspection by a qualified mechanic. Not at the dealership where you're buying the car. Take it somewhere else. Take it to your mechanic, take it down the street to a Goodyear or a Firestone or a big box shop that has a good pre-purchase inspection process. If you're looking at something out of town or you don't have time to go take the car to a mechanic yourself, I'm always raving about the guys at lemonsquad.com. In addition to having the best branding ever, they have a wonderful process where they use only qualified technicians, and they can do that pre-purchase inspection without you even being there anywhere in the country. Love those guys, so check them out. A little more expensive, still worth the money. So if you're buying a used car, it's all about finding the best quality car for your money. So budget in for those inspections. Get a Carfax report from the dealer. And auto check will work in a pinch. They're getting better, not as good as Carfax. But if the dealer doesn't provide history reports, that is the biggest red flag there is. Just walk away. That is not a dealer you want to buy a car from. If they're too cheap to do a history report, it means that they're buying crap cars that you don't want to buy. All right. You've negotiated. Now you want to see, okay, well, maybe the dealer can get me a better interest rate than what I pre-qualified for through my bank. Or if you just weren't able to get pre-approved for a loan, and now you got to see if the dealer can get you approved under one of the first-time car buyer programs. After you've negotiated the price of the car, this is when you talk about the financing. And they may be able to get you pre-approved. But here's the thing. You can do that online too. You still don't have to go to the dealership. All the dealerships, at least the big ones, not always the little guys, but the big ones will have a finance application on their website that you can go ahead and fill out. But wait to do that until you've really settled on a car and you've negotiated the price, because you don't want every dealer in town running your credit, because that can potentially hurt your credit. So just wait until you've found the right car and you've gotten that deal worked out. Now you can talk about giving the dealer a shot at the financing. Finally, step 5 is taking delivery. See if they will deliver the car to your house. That's something that more dealers have been open to over the last year because of the pandemic, because it was the only way they could sell cars. So always ask for that. The worst thing they can say is, no, we don't do that. But really push it. Even say, hey, that's a deal breaker for me. I'm not coming to the dealership. if you can't do a home delivery, then I'm going someplace else. So just see if that's something that you can negotiate into the deal. Worst case, if you have to go to the dealership, again, schedule a time to go in, preferably during the week, not on a weekend when it's crazy and it'll take forever. But if you have that appointment, you go in, you've already got the deal put together, you have that deal in writing. So I should have mentioned this before, but when you're negotiating and you get those final out the door numbers, get it on what's called a buyer's order or a bill of sale. And that makes it legally binding. If it's just in an email, text, it's not necessarily legally binding depending on your state. So always get it on a buyer's order. Then when you go into the dealership, the numbers that they show you on the paperwork you're going to sign damn well better match the numbers that they gave you that you pre-negotiated. So that's always double check all that. Make sure everything matches. Read all of the fine print. It doesn't matter how long it takes. They can just sit there and twiddle their thumbs until you are done reading absolutely everything. Because especially as a first-time car buyer, you've probably never seen any of these contracts before. And that's what they are. They are legal contracts that you are signing. So read every single bit of it. If you need to bring someone else with you who has more experience, who's done this before, just to double check, to be that second set of eyes, bring somebody with you because it's real important that you understand everything that you're signing. And this is when you sign, most of those is going to be in the finance office. That's where they make the real money at the dealerships. This is where they're going to push those extended warranties, the prepaid maintenance, wheel and tire protection, gap insurance, a whole bunch of stuff. Again, most of which you don't need, and all of which are definitely overpriced at the prices they charge, except, like I said, that prepaid maintenance. So to most of that stuff, just say no. And they don't like to tell you what the actual cost of it is. They just like to show you how it changes your monthly payment because they figure, an extra $10 a month or an extra $20 a month is digestible for a lot of people. Like, oh, that's not so bad. Yeah, I'll do that. But if they actually told you that package is like $2,700, you'd be like, I don't want to pay for that. So that's why they show it in the monthly payments, but don't let them. If it's a package you're interested in, ask them. So how much is that package? What's the actual price of that? And again, these are conversations that ideally you would have had up front, so there are no surprises here. But, if this is the first time you're looking at these things, ask them for the full price and be like, so what can you really do it for? What is your employee price on that? Because that's the only way I would consider buying it. And again, if you don't need those things, you don't need most of those. They're, extended warranties, prepaid maintenance are the two that are really the only ones that I tend to consider for any of my clients. So everything else, gosh, just say no. And if you really are not interested in extended warranty at all, but they're really pushing it, and sometimes the dealers will do that with first-time car buyers because they're trying to scare you with the repair costs of the car. And it's like, oh, well, if this breaks, well, if that breaks. And if they're really being obnoxious about it and not listening to you saying no, no is a complete sentence, but sometimes they don't listen. This is my favorite thing to say that shuts them up instantly. I love to say, wow, you're really pushing this extended warranty. So what you're really saying is this car is totally unreliable and I just shouldn't be buying it in the first place. Thank you so much for warning me. I'm going to go buy a different car. Thank you so much for your time. And then get up and start to walk out the door. You will see such fast backpedaling. It is hilarious. So that's just, kind of the last ditch thing that I pull out if they're just pushing that extended warranty and not taking the no for an answer. It's really funny watching them try to back themselves out of that when you do that to them. So it's also just, kind of good fun, but they really need to listen to you when you say no. So once you've gotten all the paperwork signed, it is time to take the keys and get the heck out of there. But let the salesperson, or sometimes they have a delivery or product specialist, go over the car with you. They're going to show you how to operate everything. They'll help you pair your phone to the Bluetooth if it has it. These are important things just to help you get the basics. You're not going to remember all of it, but that's what the owner's manual is for. And I know you're going to hate me for saying this, but read the owner's manual. Especially as a first-time car buyer, first-time car owner. And just cars are so much more complicated nowadays that you really do need to read the manual to learn how to use it. Obviously you can also look at YouTube videos about how to use things. There's lots of great videos out there, but it's important to be familiar, get to know your car. Especially read the maintenance schedule so that you know what your maintenance intervals are. Because owning a car is so much more than just making those monthly payments on the loan. You've got to take care of it. And here's a tip. I don't care what the maintenance schedule says about the oil change interval. Never go more than 7,500 miles between oil changes. And that's if you're using synthetic oil. If you're on natural oil, these days it's every 5,000 miles. But a lot of the manufacturers, especially the luxury brands, and I just found out today that Lexus, of all companies, I mean, hello, it's Toyota, they're saying we only do oil changes every 10,000 miles. I'm sorry, but I have had oil tested by Blackstone Laboratories, and I have yet to see a car that can go 10,000 miles without the oil getting really, really sludgy, which damages your engine. So until I see quantitative, independent lab verified results that you can go 10,000 miles between oil changes without causing any damage to your engine, not doing it. So I don't care what the maintenance schedule says. Change the oil no more than every 7,500 miles if you want that car to last. Also, wash your car. Take care of your car. Name your car. You know I love naming cars. That makes it part of the family. Bond with it. This is a vehicle that's going to support your life. It's going to keep you and your family safe. It should be, even if it's just a tool to you, it should at least be a very important tool, because the better you take care of your car, the better that car is going to take care of you and keep you safe and keep you on the road and get you where you need to go. And it'll be worth more money down the road when it's time to sell it and buy your second car. So folks, I hope this information has been helpful to you if you know a first-time car buyer, if you are a first-time car buyer. And check out my other podcasts as well as the articles on my blog, on my website, thecarchick.com. I'm passionate about educating you to making a good car buying decision, whether it's your first or if it's your 10th. Until next time, folks, drive safely. I'm out of here.
The Straight Shift Podcast is copyright Leanne Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of Leanne Shattuck or The Car Chick.